actually get to the feedback, what did you think of the process?
Maybe I can ask Lizelle, this is the first time I'm working on Concept Board. What was your choice for using this app? And I mean, it was easy enough to navigate, but it was a bit clunky compared to Miro. I think Miro is a little bit more stable. I don't know.
Okay, so the reason for choosing this is I was instructed by CLTD to consider the privacy or accessibility of and privacy of students. So this was one app that I by accident came across, and they actually had the templates. You can see on the concept board. It's not my thinking, it's somebody else's that created the templates already. So, and it was on concept board, so I just shared it with everybody.
Is it open source?
It's not open source, but the fine print linked to it, it meets the requirements for the ISO standards, the privacy things.
Okay,
Padlet is also one that are sharing data and whatever. So even though it's paid and students are signing up, those are one of those that are recommended to not be used.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so interesting, Lizelle, because we were talking so much at the start about you using all these things, and then these issues come up. So I'm just curious. Thanks for sharing.
Not a problem.
Okay, right. So, but except for finding the software clunky, was there any other feedback about the process? How did you experience the sort of reflection?
I found it very useful, and sometimes there's a bit of overlap between a weakness and a threat, but yeah, I found it useful.
Okay, cool. Thanks. And can you see this as a valuable tool to reflect with students about their student experience?
Most definitely. I'd never thought of using it in that context, and seeing us as a group actually go through it, I thought, wow, this is nice. It's actually better than trying to come up with your own kind of open-ended qualitative questions on how the students experienced it. And I found it very interactive, to be honest.
Okay, cool. Thanks so much. Any other feedback?
Do you want to talk, Lizelle or Daniela?
No, please share your experiences. You will be evaluating me in a sense, so I'm here to listen.
Well, are we talking about the program that we used?
No,
for this purpose?
more the process. But I mean, you can reflect on the program if you want to do so as well.
Well, I think the program, in fact, helps us evaluate the process, because it's very structured, it's very focused, and in our group, I think we were able to interact very constructively in terms of evaluating the process. How does that sound?
Thanks. Well, I think that's very valuable feedback, and I think that is the good thing about using a tool like, sorry, I can't remember what the name of the software is, but like something like this or Miro or whatever you use.
We used Concept Board.
Concept Board, thank you.
Yeah.
So for using Concept Board in terms of allowing students to also add their own thoughts. So when we ran the SWOT analysis with HSS, we looked at, so we also provided students, exactly the Miro board that's anonymized, so that if they don't feel comfortable about sharing openly, one of the threats or weaknesses or opportunity or strength, then they can add it to the board, and we also then open the board for a week afterwards to still go back and add some thoughts. So it's definitely a strength to use the software. Any other comments or reflections?
If I can just add, what's nice about the online type of whiteboard, can be anything that you use, is literally a whiteboard. Is the fact that you can share the link, like we've done. We shared it earlier in the week or towards the end of last week, and people could have accessed it and started adding their points, or in their own, so like it's a think, pair, share kind of activity that you can do. And you can say, add your own things, then pair up with somebody in a group, and then we share it with the larger group. So that's another way of structuring it, then using the online tool before the actual event is taking place.
Yeah, so thanks, Lazar. I think there's definitely different ways of doing this, because it kind of, if you do it where you, like how we did it, sharing the board up front, and then you have a bit more time in terms of going through that as well and reflecting during the focus group session, or unpacking it a bit more, the concepts that you didn't really understand. So it's really very valuable doing it that way around as well. Okay. Last thoughts, if there are any. Otherwise, let's move on to what feedback we got from the different sessions. So what was your findings about the professional learning series? So any last comments?
I think we've summarized them in our evaluation. So you might get our comments from our evaluation.
Okay, cool. So let's go through the evaluation. Which group wants to go first? The SWOT or the HATS?
We group one, so we can go first.
Okay, cool.
So we were just talking about the program more broadly. We said the strengths are that it's been running for 2 years and it's got credibility. The topics are relevant to current teaching and learning issues as they unfold, and they address them quite well. There's a big diversity of speakers. Topics are interesting and diverse themselves, and that the platform gives flexibility and access. The weaknesses were that the platform has its limits there, because it's online and people have access issues through that too. Sometimes the follow through of ideas in practice is difficult to assess or evaluate, or there are additional resources that might be needed to see whether the concepts actually get applied. There was an issue with the time slots, that there's always going to be issues with time slots, that I don't know. So I don't know whether that was really an issue. WITS extended staff don't use their WITS email, and they're not getting the emails around. They don't often use their WITS email, which is the first problem. And the second, well, they're not really getting the marketing for these, so they're not joining it. And the different clips, particularly for clinical preceptors, this was Yuhandisa's point, that people who are out there in the field and who teach students at the bedside, they don't often feel part of WITS or these programs, and they're not linked into them. So that in itself is an opportunity to market to those people more closely and to try bring them in and make them feel more like WITS staff, because this platform is not reaching everybody. We also said that using the new marketing office to advertise more widely would be useful, that there are other role players in the university that would benefit from this in allied health and other helping practices that could be brought on board and to boost the numbers and the level of interest. And it could also be used as a catalyst to bring more resources to other platforms like the extended academic platform, to say, well, this is why we need certain things, physical infrastructure in those spaces in order for people to have the space to engage in these sorts of activities. And an opportunity could be to extend topics beyond clinical spaces, to extend to other role players, because they apply. Yeah, I think I said that. Some of the threats are budgetary constraints, the reality of actually using this as an application, a way of extending the platform, the extended academic platform. The fact that staff levels of commitment vary, especially when it comes to teaching and learning issues, so getting that buy-in is difficult. That being student-centered is actually quite a lot of work, and it's hard to, again, get people to buy into those ideas. And the digital divide is still a reality that we have to consider, especially for people who are based elsewhere. Those are just our initial ideas, but I think we could probably have spoken further. Ania and Yandisa, would you like to add to that?
I'm happy with what you said. I think you summarized it nicely from what we're discussing.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything further to add.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And then the 6 Thinking Hats group.
No, but it's got to be you because it seems like Daniela has dropped off the call. So sorry.
Let me go back to the board. I don't know how to enlarge these notes. How do I make them bigger? Lizelle?
A good question. I think if you just
Use fingers.
click on it and then it will.
Here we go. So, in our 6 hats, goodness, I'm struggling just to use this. So we basically said that it's very valuable because it allows us to improve our teaching and our learning, and it would help us then give the students direction as to how to structure their learning. Very important. We felt it was well structured. We felt that it was well organized. In terms of our brown hats, we said, unfortunately, there was limited time for practical application and implementation. There were many topics that perhaps were not relevant to specific individuals at any one time. That was on the opinions. In the upside, we had, I'm just trying to enlarge that a little if I can, because I'm squinting here. Lizelle, can you read better than I? We felt that it was good that experts in their field were called to present. It used the benefit of online delivery to incorporate a program into the teacher's very busy schedule with minimal disruption. The value of recording each session was obvious. The subjects were very focused and succinct and well presented. In terms of the black hats, time slots are sometimes a little difficult to manage, but again, that was influenced by individuals. One of the downsides was that the program was probably not developed with consultation, with more consultation with the attendees to find out what they would like to hear. Daniela mentioned that we should, with the COVID-19 regulations changing, we should have had the rest, or at least some of the meetings in person. And another down was the sessions were only offered to the staff of this department, despite our students being taught by colleagues outside of family medicine, which is something that, in fact, Stephen raised. In terms of our green hat, it provides us with opportunities for networking and for forming new relationships. The series should be offered to other departments and colleagues, again, emphasizing some of Stephen's thoughts outside of the department, outside of the faculty, who are not joint appointees, and we can collaborate and embark on IPE as a result. And in terms of our blue hat, the topics might not always have been appropriate, and that possibly impacted on attendance. We felt that there should be workshops to assist with implementation and have champions or community of practice to support, and there should be guidance on how to apply and use the information in the real world. Some of it was a bit didactic rather than practical. So that was our overview. Have I left anything out, Alizelle?
No, you've done us justice.
Thank you, Liam.
Great, thanks. I think there's some very good findings for us to, especially I like the finding around the consultation with attendees, and that made me think of doing a survey and some of the other things that we could definitely work on and promoting the series further. Yeah, so basically we're at the end of this session. Thank you so much for joining. And next week is our last session, but it's sort of a teaching portfolio session where everyone wants to, work on their portfolio. So technically, this is sort of the last session in the series. So I just want to say thank you for those that, attended and made contributions, and it was I think it was an interesting year, and I'm definitely going to reach out to all of you to suggest topics for next year. And one of the things that you said is that maybe we should start bringing in some reflections from people on the ground as well. And I thought maybe that could be a good way to start the first part of next year's series, is sort of reflection over the last 3 years from people that presented or always attended and so forth. But yeah, I think it needs a bit more thinking. But yeah, anything, Lizelle, from your side before we close?
No, I think it's enjoyable and to hear what other people are saying and what their thoughts are, and overall it's positive. So yeah, I want to thank people that are the attending every single week. So yeah, thank you for your support. Mervin has got his hand up.
I see. Mervin, I think just before you speak, I think the other thing that we do need to think about is like action. How are we going to take it a bit further, because it has been just discussions. So I think we'll have to sit and think through that as well. But over to you.
Well, that just is an extension of something that we discussed, in that we felt that workshops would be very valuable on a regular basis, but not necessarily as frequently perhaps once a month or once every 6 or 8 weeks, depending on the practicality. And if one has adequate time of notification, then one can flex one's own timetable to fit in with these, because the personal interaction or the interpersonal interaction at a workshop is definitely very stimulating and very dynamic, and maybe as if not more valuable than the online exchange that we've had at present. But thank you very much for an excellent year and a very stimulating year. Thank you.
Only a pleasure. Yeah, thanks for attending today's session, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.